you've got a book called Shapers and Founders, right? What is it that some of Asia's founder-led companies are doing when it comes to talent? What is the difference in approach?
Um, I think one of the things we see about Asia's founder CEOs, and just quick context, we interviewed 30 of Asia's founder CEOs. They come from companies that have created disproportionate value over the last 2 decades. And one of the things we noted that was distinct is that these founder owner CEOs take quite a different view on talent than most organizations. The first is there's a very clear sense of, look, we hire for mindset, for attitude, for the cultural fit, rather than necessarily the skills. There is a desire to say we can build and train people over time. They take a true cycle view. They are loyal to their employees. They recognize there'll be peaks and troughs. And so they say, look, we will journey with you and we're going to help you evolve over time. These are traits that I think are particularly relevant today in today's AI age because we don't necessarily know what skills we'll need in the future. So the sense of saying we hire for people with the right attitude, the desire to learn, and we invest in our people over time to help them.
Hans, many people have been commenting about the fact that India doesn't have a serious play in AI. You're an investor in India. What does the AI future for India look like?
Question to me, right? Well, if you look at the AI industry, I'll try to look first at the private equity groups and their statement about AI. And for example, EQT, the largest, one of the largest private equity houses in the world, say that they want to build the most AI literate investment organization, and I guess in the world. So that shows how important it is for AI. But India doesn't really have the infrastructure, the hardware production of chips, and they don't really have the big tech giants, right? And they don't have this frontier lab, model labs that produces. It's dominated, it's a hegemony of the US with China coming. So it will be extremely capital intensive to develop this. And I don't think it's a good road for India to take on that. I think India has a much better chance to use this because it's scalable, and India has talent. India has enormous talent. India has the infrastructure in place to use this, and they have complex problems. They have real world problems that they can use AI to fix it. So we as an investor would much more bet on investing into companies that are utilizing this technology than actually developing the infrastructure or the technology itself. So companies in India using AI, using it the correct way, implementing it, developing it, using it to generate turnover, excellence, and comparative advantage. These are the companies we're looking at.
But the lack of a foundational model doesn't bother you from an investment perspective?
Not really. No, I think this is AI will be it's like a commodity. It's you can access it anywhere, and of course there might be a geopolitical risk that it's owned and controlled by the US and maybe China to some extent, but these are companies. They want to earn money, so this will be a product, a commodity available worldwide for sure.
Okay, I see Irina smiling at the last sentence. I'm just going to come to Irina in a little while, but before that, Irina, we keep hearing about this concept called the autonomous enterprise. Before this, it was the smart company, the cognitive enterprise. Now it's autonomous. We're talking about how leaders are going to cope with AI, and now you're saying you'll have a company without leaders. It'll just run itself, the autonomous enterprise, with SAP's help.
Well, I think that sounds like science fiction, but you never know. What is science fiction 10 years ago is reality today, right? And when we talk about autonomous enterprise, it's not that there are no more people left in the company, right? It's to ensure that in terms of activity, in terms of the tasks that have to be done, that should be done by technology. So for SAP, when we talk about the autonomous enterprise vision, what we see is that leveraging on AI, on business AI, which is different from consumer AI, but really enterprise AI that is embedded within the processes that have got trusted business data and the governance in place, we can run autonomously so that our people can focus on strategy and are still very much on top of giving the direction and then talking about how they can bring more value to the company. Right? And based on a recent research we have done with Oxford Economics on the value of AI, it's really good to see that India is leading the way in terms of leveraging on AI investments from a strategic view, because we can also talk separately about how it's still very piecemeal today when we talk about moving from experimentation to execution. But India is number 2 in terms of leveraging on AI as a strategic investment.
Okay, that's good to hear. Irina, last but not the least, for those in the audience who don't know what the Gartner hype cycle is, it's a simple graph that looks like this. It first says peak of inflated expectations, trough of disillusionment, and plateau of productivity. Right? I think it happened with the dot-com, it happened with internet, it happened with innovations in housing finance. And now we are at the point of inflated expectations where we think AI can do everything? And therefore, is the trough of disillusionment coming very soon?
Let me frame the answer a little differently. And first of all, thank you so much for having us in the panel, and very honored to be along with all of you guests. I think the way we see it is the momentum has certainly not cooled, and the conviction that we are seeing from the ecosystem is much stronger and louder than any hype cycle. Why do I say this? A few things. First of all, where do I put the pin also? In this entire curve, there are a few parts. For example, when we started, there were chatbots, there were AI assistants. They are table stakes for everybody quite some time back. It comes in the age of what you're building with agents. We've got started and it's up in the rising. And thirdly, towards autonomous discovery, we are just in the initial stages. So everything in various stages. That's the first part. But more importantly, the conversations that we are having with customers, fellow travelers in the entire journey, about 18 months back, it used to be, what can I do with AI? Have I really started my journey on AI? Now, it is to do with have I built across on production scale? What can be put across through brittle testing? What can have audit trails, which means people have gone past any demos and wanting to use it and be convinced about it. And thirdly, the capability of the models itself. It's gone across on doing very long horizon tasks, and that capability is doubling. That's been happening for the last 2 years. So just to answer your question, I would just summarize by saying we are not at the peak, we are possibly at the beginning of an exponential acceleration.
The investor, I think it was John Templeton, who said the four most dangerous words in business are, this time it's different. So Irina, is it different this time, or is AI another technology that we're going to get used to and just incorporate into our lives?
Absolutely very different. And the way we are seeing it from Anthropic in India, India remains the second largest user of Cloud.ai. And not just that, worldwide, it is the largest proportion, 45% using it for anything to do with.
Okay, Cheryl, back to you. Now, obviously, human behavior is notoriously hard to predict. But in your book, Shapers and Founders, you've studied human behavior, sometimes after the fact. So what behaviors and mindsets have you studied from CEOs that you think will be particularly valuable in the era of AI?
So I think what's intriguing is that the behaviors that made the leaders we studied, which include in India some of the greats, the Ambanis, Murthy's, Mahindra, Uday Kotak were all there. So, and when we look at those behaviors, what we see is a couple of things. Number one is just the comfort with ambiguity and in identify and making opportunity out of chaos. I think what many founder CEOs, their take was, look, there is no bigger risk than not taking any risk. And so even in a situation like this, where there is a lot of uncertainty, these people are eyeing it and recognizing the time is now to experiment. But that being said, I would also say that from an innovation lens, they are constantly expecting to say, look, both the what we call the big I, the big leaps, as well as the small I, the constant innovation. So they are asking themselves questionally, how do I embrace this to make it different? To give you an example, Sydney Lou Foxconn, one of the largest players, right? So from their perspective, Sydney Lou would say, look, every 3 years, we are asking ourselves. So they are asking themselves questionally, how do I embrace this to make it different? To give you an example, Sydney Lou Foxconn, one of the largest players, right? So from their perspective, Sydney Lou would say, look, every 3 years, we are asking ourselves, what's the next big thing? And the moment they've launched it, they're on the search again constantly for that front. So that's what we call the big I innovation way of thinking. But at the same time, they recognize, and we had this long history in Asia of something called Kaizen, right? The constant improvement. They also are constantly recognizing that the little changes we make day to day drive improvement. We see this very well in India, where small incremental changes has made India an innovator.
What's called jugaad in India, a little
Exactly.
bit, step by step.
So same concept. And so if I think about why these traits, while many of the owners CEOs who spoke to are not from the AI generation, but the commonality here is that with AI coming, we don't know what we don't know. We are still constantly discovering. But the point is that the moment is there to seize it. The moment is there to have a clear-eye view of what value could this potentially create. And we see those behaviors as being still as relevant today.
Okay. Hans, almost nobody talks about blockchain anymore after the lockdown, right? And your company uses blockchain to kickstart lending. Tell us a little bit about where blockchain is and how you use it and how that's going to reshape finance in India.
That was a question I hope we would not have time to ask. So, I mean, to be honest, for me, blockchain that's equivalent to the cryptocurrency, right? I mean, this was
To
the way
NFTs.
well, that was the way I was kind of introduced to this in my younger days. But I think that there are so many companies now using blockchain-like technologies that it's become like common. I mean, we do not necessarily discuss it as part of the investment strategy or something we have to discuss separately for additional investments, right? We just get technologies available for the business, which could be based on blockchain technology. So for us, I mean, this is not a kind of a separate investment case. It's just a technology which is there. It's one of very many new technologies or disruptive technologies that have happened. I mean, if I look back to my 30 years of experience in private equity, so much has happened during those 30 years. It's the last one, which is we are discussing now, the AI. I mean, that's of course very serious disruptive technology. But looking for 30 years, you got the smartphones, you got the internet, you got cloud computing, you got this blockchain, you got so many things, and you got your investors asking for you have to focus on ESG investments, so and renewables and circular economy, and you have to adapt to all these new technologies. So blockchain is just one of them. And for me, it's kind of, in a way, a no-brainer. Again, as long as you have something available, you will use it if it's good for your business.
How do you personally use AI, other than
who I work for?
Yeah, for work and for life, how do you personally use AI?
No, I mean, I've, as I said, 30 years of private equity experience. I mean, here in India, being humble. I'm here to learn. I'm not here to teach. I'm willing and happy to share, this knowledge from 30 years in Europe, doing small and medium-sized growth type of investments. And I hope to meet up with good Indian businessmen who want our money, not just because it's money, but because it's, we can add a lot much more, adding our expertise, adding access to new markets. We will share with that knowledge that we build up and help entrepreneurs, creating these big national leaders and international players. So this is how we work. We want to be on the ground. We want to, as we say, get dirty on our hands. We want to be meeting with the entrepreneurs regularly and really be a player that they can be sparring with all the time. So being an active owner, I think that's the slogan of private equity, is active ownership. We're not just a sleeping investor. We're there to, help developing.
Irina, Smriti Irani just referenced you as the India head of Anthropic. So give us a sense of Anthropic's scale in India and how you hope to interact with the government that also wants a sovereign AI in India.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we set up our office about 6 months back, and it's been a rapid pace in the way we are kind of looking at working along with India. India is a very strategic and core market for two reasons. One, we have the builders across the entire developer ecosystem, startups, people in the education, higher education, etc. And more importantly, it's also kind of contributing to the mission, the way Anthropic is looking at serving the last mile and solving population scale problems. So from the time that we started, there's been a few things. One, the adoption and the enthusiasm has continued to be very strong. And being a builder company ourselves, we just love working with organizations here and the country which is creating the builders. Second, a lot of the asks from the government and the regulatory space was also towards ensuring that you have data residency, which was already there, but inferencing available, and we just announced it as well. So that creates a big unlock. We've been working with a lot of the banks, the likes of the Axis Bank, Kotak Bank, etc., who are using it for creating engineering excellences and productivity. We are working with NPCI for what they're creating as an agentic solutions. We are working with the local and the global SIs who are kind of building solutions like the likes of the TCSs, Infosys, etc., and creating that globally. And to the question on government, we are working with them for areas of priority sectors, including agriculture, education, skilling, healthcare, life sciences, and also working via what we call our beneficial deployments team, which work with NGOs to ensure that we are creating nuanced solutions for the market. For example, our AI for Science is working along with IISc for a solution which is towards anti-venom discoveries for ensuring that you're ahead of the curve for something like a snake bites, which kind of have a fatality of about 58,000 annually. We are working with Digital Green, which is working along with farmers to ensure that you're responding to queries for 1 million a year in multiple languages, working with Adalat to ensure that we are kind of getting legal cases ahead of the curve. So that's the framing with which we are working. And I think our mission here remains that it's not with the playbook that we've come in, it's to co-create the playbook which will work for India, and then we take it globally.
Okay, on that note, very a similar question for you. Both of you work in global companies, you have global ambitions, you'd like to deliver services across the world, you'd like to deliver agility for enterprises across the world, and you have to deal with governments that want local cloud options, that want data residency. Is there a conflict between global ambitions and catering to the legitimate needs of local governments?
For Arena,
Yeah, for you.
yeah. So SAP has been actually operating in India for over 3 decades. And across the world, including India, we work very, very closely with governments over our tenure and get great support here in India in partnership to understand your local requirements and also then to bring the global best practices knowledge to the local countries, right? For SAP, we actually developed a lot of our innovation out of India already. We have got labs in Bangalore, which is the largest lab outside of our headquarters in Germany. And that brings us the ability to understand local requirements and to cater them for the market. In fact, 40% of innovation that we also deploy to our customers globally is developed right out of labs here. And SAP, having worked with the largest enterprises as well as SMEs, we are familiar with all the requirements in terms of, and we do have I would say, a lot of flexibility in how we deploy cloud options as well as AI across to all our customers that we serve across 25 industries.
Cheryl, you theorize in your book that the winners in the AI era won't be the companies with the best or strongest AI. It won't be. It will be those that are best at turning AI into business results. How does an organization do this? You can have the fanciest toy in the room, but you don't know how to turn it into business results or profits or market share.
So I think fundamentally, when we look at the stats, right, most about 80, 90% of companies say they're investing in AI. But you ask in terms of actual value capture, I think in the same vein, 80, 90% are saying we don't see the value capture yet. And what we see fundamentally is that getting the technology and data right, and admittedly, that is challenging, but that's only just the first part of the story. The bigger part is how do we help our talent prepare for it, and what's the change management in play? Now, the reality is this. We know now that about 76% of jobs are going to need to be fundamentally redesigned just by the scope of the degree to which technology, whether it's from basic automation all the way to gen and agentic AI plays, is going to change the nature of the work. In that model, the companies that are going to win are the companies that are amazing talent factories. They're amazing at upskilling, reskilling, redeployment at scale. Now, for most organizations, previously the shelf life was much longer. So that kind of training is something we're like, yes, it happens, but it's not something that's deliberate, that's intensive, that's driven. So that's one thing that we are seeing, that the companies now that are doing better at the value capture, they are not just redesigning the workflows to make sure AI is really embedded rather than just saying, I've got cool tech, guys, come and play with it. They have redesigned the workflows, but then they're investing in the people, they're investing in upskilling, reskilling, as well as they're investing extensively in the change management to drive adoption. There's a lot of anxiety about AI. One of the things we see actually is that one of the biggest barriers is just people being afraid to say, this is going to take over my job, so I'm not going to engage. So for us, that notion of saying invest in technology, invest in operating models, invest in change management, that will be the difference in the value capture.
We have about 5 minutes to go, so I'm going to do a rapid fire round. Irina, first for you. Two things that should be keeping Indian CEOs awake at night with respect to AI.
I think two things that I would really encourage Indian CEOs to do is that first, use it for yourself to build things, not just ask questions, build it for certain things that you really care about. Those dashboards, the live dynamic screens, whatever you may. The second thing is ensure that you figure out what is the most complex problem which or a moonshot which you've not solved for it.
Maybe difficult to answer, but we have been in Gift City for some years now. And I think we're very happy with it. We have a very good dialogue with the administration and the regulator. I feel that everything is quite dynamic. You are able to see changes that are necessary. We see really increasing activities, a lot of buildings coming up, new companies coming in. And if you compare with Singapore and Dubai and other these type of offshore hubs, they have like 20, 30, 40, 50 years of track record. They have built up wealth management, international money flows, their trading centers, their shipping centers. I mean, it doesn't make sense to try to replicate. This is not a copy paste. The advantage of Gift is the access to India. So India as the market today with the highest growth rates, where basically from now on, all serious investors will need to have activities towards India, because here is where the profits are made. And Gift City, I think, is the place to be because of the regulation, the fact that you're in an offshore zone, and the access to India is a strategic element of it. And then long term also, Indian companies can use Gift City to go abroad. So I think Gift City is a marvelous entity, and it's under development as well, and it's improving by the day.
Okay, final question for you, Verena. For a non-tech audience, it's quite hard to grasp how big the opportunity is for enterprise AI. Can you throw a couple of numbers at us to tell us how big the enterprise opportunity is?
It is enormous. Let's put it that way. I think we all acknowledge it. And I would say it's not another technology cycle or bust. I will quote McKinsey here. Latest research show that the opportunity or the economic value that we can gain from AI is $4.4 trillion US, right? And we talk about value, we can see tremendous value, and it's really good to see India looking to leapfrog, right? So currently, in terms of investments, it's about 2.6, 2.7, 2.6 to 2.8 million investments based on the research I talked about earlier of investments that the companies make in AI. But India companies that we have interviewed plan to almost double that to 45% over the next 2 years and see a great amount of return. So looking forward to partnering with many Indian companies to leapfrog and showcase AI and win the AI race together.
Okay, Cheryl, final question for you. We have about a minute left. You know, many people are worried about AI threatening their jobs, and the McKinsey person, you're usually the smartest person in that room. What happens when the CEO says, I'm not going to hire somebody from McKinsey, I have an agentic McKinsey consultant? Are you worried that consulting is going to be impacted by the very thing that you're promoting?
Oh, consulting is absolutely being impacted already today. I see my starting analysts building in minutes, if not at most hours, things that used to take us weeks to put together. I think for me, though, what doesn't change is at the end of the day, it's the human connection. You can have the right answer, but we all know the moment you hit the ground, strategy fails if culture isn't there, the people connectors aren't there. So for that reason, for me, like the question is not about does AI replace us, but how does AI augment the thinking? So for me as a consultant, I think AI frees up capacity for us to be investing deeply in the human relationships, in the culture building, in the capability building. That's what will enable success.
In the words of Peter Drucker, he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. All right, ladies and Hans, thank you very much for being part of this panel discussion. Thank you for being a patient audience. Ritika, back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.